Hello and welcome, this is Sarah. Today we're continuing our mod tutorials. We're here in the Mod Constructor 5 and today we're gonna go and create a buff. Yes, we're finally gonna go and create something for ourselves. We haven't done it yet in these tutorials. The first tutorial was a tutorial about The Sims 4 Studios and the Mod Constructor that I've opened right here to give you an overview of how things work, so you can get a little bit familiar with the programs and aren't that intimidated when you open it for the first time. The previous episode was about the XML injector and how that works. I definitely recommend watching that one before you watch this one, because we'll be creating a file with a buff, and then right now we can change that buff into our own buff, so we can test it in game and have a look how it looks, if you understand what I mean. So yeah, I definitely recommend watching the previous episode first before you dive into this one. So like I said, we have the Mod Constructor 5 open here. I'm using version 5 beta 10. So now we're just gonna go and click here on element, and the first thing you might notice is that the word buff is nowhere to be seen. So the reason for that is because buff is not just a buff. You can't just create a buff and that's it. No, the buff needs to be added to an interaction. And that's why I recommend using from the previous episode, the XML injector, because I've created this interaction, and then after this, when you click the interaction, it will show a buff. So now when we create a buff, we can add this buff to the previous episode interaction of the XML injector, and then we can see the buff and see it in game and how it looks, because that's what we want to do. So I'm just gonna go and click on show all, and then first of all we do see buff over here, but we're just gonna go and ignore that one. Instead we're gonna go down here to say loot action sets, and I'm gonna go and give it a name. So I've called this mod tutorial buff. Then I'm going to say create element and click. I'm going to open it by just clicking. I'm going to go and say add condition group, click. I'm going to go and right click on always run and say add actions. And then I'm going to go and open the editor and click on add buff. I know, it was a whole mouthful, but yes, that's how we're going to do it. So now we see this, we can go and click on reason, and we're gonna give a reason why this buff is showing. So I'm just gonna go and call it from tutorial interaction. Then we have here, ignore if the same already has the buff. I do recommend leaving this on, so you don't get double or triple buffs in game. This participant over here, it's almost always actor, and actor means the current sim that did the interaction. If we click on here, we can say a target sim, we can say listeners. There are so many options, but for now I'm just gonna go and say click actor and leave it like that. Now for the next part, to create the buff, is we're gonna go in here and click on create and open that. So now we are ready to create our buff. The name is the name of the buff. So let's give it a name, whatever you want to name your buff. I'm just gonna go and call it tutorial, and then here now we have the description. But before we fully dive into the description, I also recommend in downloading the Sims 4, we see here the Sims 4 modding PDF file that I have uploaded in the link down below for the Sims file share net. So let's have a look at that and open it. So here is the PDF file, and why I recommend using this is because I have created this like shortcut PDF file for things that I just use very often. Like here we have the simoleon sign. I copy that quite often. You can just go and copy. For first names, if you want to use your Sim's first name, we can just click here and copy that. For female and male, this is mainly for those that don't have the English version, or at least a version that doesn't have the pronoun update. So for female, it's an F and a 0, and then whatever you want to say, she, her, woman, I don't know, any female word. Or not even, if you don't have to use a female word. And then for male, it is exactly the same as for female, but then with the M in front of it, and then the he section can just be changed to whatever you want to change it to. Now for the English version, we have the pronoun version. And for the pronouns, we have she, he, her, his, her, him, herself, himself. And then we can just use these. And I only did the she, he, but it also means the they, them, and all the other stuff that you can like customize, you know? And it will just use the customization of the game, what the player chose for their pronoun. So even if they use something really funny like a pancake or whatever, it will show up like that. So that's why I wanted to show this first before we continue, because you might in the description want to use the Sims name. Like I like to use the Sims name, so for that I'm going in first name and I'm gonna click on here and I'm gonna copy that, and then we're gonna go back into the mod constructor 5 and we're just gonna say paste. And that's it. Super simple. Now we'll say the Sims name when the buff pops up. So in my case, I'm doing everything with Lana. She's my mod testing sim. So in my mind, when I'm thinking about the story, I'm also using her name. So yeah, Lana is upset that, and I want to use she. I'm gonna go back in here, and because I'm using the English version, I'm gonna use the pronoun version and click copy that, and I'm gonna say here, you have to make sure that everything is perfect though. So Lana is upset that she got this buff. Okay, that's what came up in my mind, so we're using that, but you could just write whatever you want to write. And yeah, now we have the icon. So for the icon, it's the icon of the buff. You can just use these buff images over here. There's so many. So yeah, definitely go and have a look at that. For now, I just want to use a custom one because I want to show you how that works. So I'm gonna go and click in browse. And then I go into my documents folder, where I have this folder that has literally almost every image in the game. I just haven't downloaded the recent pack images yet. But yeah, you can just go and click on anything. I do recommend importing images if you're using a buff that is not from base game. So it basically means, like, if I choose a buff from let's see, let's do Snowy Escape. So, and then I'm just gonna go and click on whatever. She was upset, right? Upset, I don't know. I'm gonna go with the one in the fire. I don't know, I just feel like using that one. So click and open that, and then I just go and say, is it a positive buff or a negative buff? In this case, I'm gonna go negative, and then I say import image. Click that and say select. So the thing about custom images is it will add this image now into my package file as well. Yeah, so it just means that you can use any image even if people don't own that pack. Just make sure you have that image as well imported into your package file. So next on the list we have emotions. Oh my god. So I'm gonna say yes. She feels sad, so I'm gonna click and say sad. And I'm gonna give it a 3 emotional weight. So an emotional weight is the plus number that when you hover on top of your buff, it will have a +3, +1, +10, +10,000 for sleeping. It will say that. So that's just what the emotional weight is. Then we can also has a fixed duration, and that's just the time of how long this buff lasts. So I'm gonna say 4 hours. What is the you basically have to do 60 times anything times the number, and then you just put that in here. And I'm also gonna go and leave this on for add emotion category. So that just means, like here it says, this allows interactions like hide under the cover and take cold shower to change the decay rate. It just means the decay will the decay will go faster, so Sims can feel better quicker. And that's exactly how I'm just gonna go and leave it. Now we have created our buff. There's just one last thing that I want to do is I'm gonna go and click on element settings. Now we have, you know, these weird numbers over here. For this one, I'm gonna leave it so we can have a look at how it looks in The Sims 4 Studios. Just gonna leave that. So what I am going to do right now is I'm going to create another buff, basically the same, but the reason for that is because I want to show you how you can use your own emotions, or like other emotions. For example, we have the mood pack over here. Let me click this one. So the mood pack is created by Lumpinou. I think I'm not sure how to say that. I'm very sorry. I'm really bad at pronouncing names. But she basically created all these other moods that we can add to our buff, and it's absolutely great. I love it. So I want to go and show you how we can add one of her moods into our buff. Okay, so now I basically copied almost everything from the what we did before. However, I'm going to make this a positive buff, and I changed the icon so it's easier for you to see in game. So to add our own emotion, I'm just gonna go in browse over here, and just like what we did before, here we see all these the moods that we can choose from, but instead of clicking one here, we're gonna go in here and put in our own. So for this buff, I wanted to use the proud mood, so I'm gonna go and search for the word proud. It's over here. I'm gonna go and copy these numbers. It will also say what color it is, so it will give you the exact same colors as the confident buff. So now I'm just gonna go and paste it over there, and I'm gonna say save, and that's it for that. Now I'm gonna go and export this. Gonna make sure that I'm exported in the correct document file. So I'm gonna name this tutorial buffs, and then I'm saying enter. So now, because we have used a mood that is not in game, you will get this the mod has been exported with errors, and that's just because that mood is not in game, and that's fine. Just ignore it for now. We're gonna fix that. So I'm gonna say close. Now we have opened the Sims 4 Studio, and I opened the tutorial buff file, and the first thing I want to show you is that, as you can see here, it will say those weird numbers that I showed you before, and that's really because over here, if we go in here and then click here, we have those weird numbers. So that's why I do recommend changing these numbers, especially if you are opening it later into the Sims 4 Studio, because it can be quite confusing if everything has weird numbers. Like this one, for the mood pack, I did change that name to mood pack, so that's why that one is says mood pack. So I'm just gonna go for now, change it into buff over here. So yes, you can change that by yourself, but I do recommend really to do it just in the mod constructor. Now also what I like to do is I like to copy that name, then make sure to go into the constructor file over here that has the same numbers as the buff, so same instance numbers. I'm going to click on that, and then here it says the word constructor. I'm gonna paste those the words, because I like to sometimes sort, and then over here we can click this, and then it, you know, changes the way it looks in here. And then if it says constructor, all the constructors like here will just stay and go all the way below each other, and it's really frustrating, especially if you're trying to change something in a buff. So for now I'm just gonna go in mood pack, and then here the constructor, and paste it as well, and now they will be under each other. So the first thing we are going to do now is we're going to make sure that the mood that we added from the mood pack, that it works in game. So we have here, we can have a look at the normal buff and see, you can see how it looks, that it looks different than, oh, it's the bottom one, than this one. So what we need to do, we need to go and add the categories. I always just go and copy that, then I go in here and I'll make sure to delete that one, and go and say paste, and then double and add this. Then we do need to close that, so you're gonna go to back and then close it. It's very important to make sure to close everything. As you can see, while I was doing this, there were errors showing up in here, and we gotta make sure that those errors are not showing. For now, it says categories set buffs, and that's not correct. We're gonna change the name set to proud because that's what we used. If you are unsure, just open it and have a look. The mood type numbers are here, 47, and here it says 47, the whole number, and then proud, and we're just changing that to proud. Now every text you created in the mod constructor is already perfectly in here, so I'm just gonna go and leave that alone. But here you have the buff names and then the buff description, and you can see the numbers. And in the previous episode you saw we did the whole this and then whatever it is, and that's just a guide for you to know what the description says exactly. But for now I'm just gonna go and leave that. It's not necessary, especially for smaller mods. It doesn't really matter, but if you have a big mod, I would definitely recommend writing everything behind it so you don't get confused while you're editing or working on your mod. And the other thing I wanted to show is if we go into the English or any other language, they're all the same, is that here indeed has now all the text. And you can see the key, and the key is then the number that's over here. So now I think it's about damn time that we're gonna go and look and see how our buff looks in game. There are different ways we can go on and do this. I recommend in just opening the other XML injector first, and then you see here I have a buff and a loot. And what I just recommend, what is probably the easiest, is to take all of these and say batch export. And we're just gonna go and say yes, make sure you're in a correct folder, and say save. Now we will open a new folder. Then I'm gonna go into the XML injector. I'm gonna say batch import, and I'm taking those files and import them. Now before I go any further, I'm opening this again and I'm deleting it. So what we've done now is we have imported the buffs into our XML injector file. Now the next thing that is important is we're going to go and click on English. Then we're going to again go and say batch export. I'm going to save that. Only English is necessary at the moment. And we're going to go back in here in the XML injector file. And we're going to say batch import and import English. Okay, so now the English version will have different words than the Chinese or any other language. So we're gonna go and select them all. We're going to go in tools and then add copy string table to all languages. Okay, so for some reason English isn't working. So what we're gonna do is delete. Gonna click on one of them, one of the languages, and we're gonna go and do it again. It's all about trial and error, and you know, it happens. I'm gonna say done, and now we do have the English language. So yeah. So now that issue is fixed. So now it means that the text that we created in the mod constructor 5 is now also added to our XML injector tutorial file that we created in the previous tutorial, in the previous episode. So now we're just gonna go into these tutorial files. You see why I mean actually that it's so important to name your files, because it just piles up. There's more and more and more coming every time. Okay, so now to add the buff, we're gonna go into this mod tutorial buff mood pack and then the mod tutorial buff. So these are the loot action sets. You can see them here. It says loot compared to these. Let me see, it says buff over here. So we're gonna take these. I am, however, gonna go _, and say loot to both of them. Also, you can see over here it has action tuning. That's what it says, and those are the loots. So the reason we created a loot is because in the, for example here in the phone file, if we scroll down to outcome, it has an outcome for a loot. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take one of the buffs, or if you kept it the same buff, that's fine too. Just take the buff and go into one of the interactions. You can easily see here there are two interactions that we created. I'm choosing phone. I'm gonna scroll the way down and find outcome. I'm gonna paste then those numbers. The numbers now changed, and I'm going to go and change the text as well. For that, I'll just go and take it here. I'll copy that and paste. So now when we do the phone interaction, we will get the Z buff, I think we did for that one. So we're gonna go and copy the one for the mood pack as well. I'm gonna add that to the computer. So we'll scroll all the way down until we find the word outcome. What is here? I'm gonna control click and paste. Then I'm gonna take the name as well, and I'm gonna go back, and then I'm gonna go all the way down to where it says outcome, and I'm gonna paste that. So now all of that is done. We're gonna go back into the tutorial buffs, and we're gonna take the two images and say batch export, save. Now I'm just gonna go and close that one. We're gonna go back and say batch imports and add. So now we really make sure that the buffs also have the images that we added to the icons that are over there. I'm gonna go say save, and I'm gonna add it to gonna delete those, and I'm gonna add the XML injector tutorial into our mods folder. I'm gonna delete it here and add it here. So the reason I'm using the XML injector tutorials and not the xosdr tutorial buffs that we just created is because we have added all these all the buffs into the XML injector tutorial. So that's why I'm leaving it here. Also, make sure you have the mood pack installed into your Sims 4 folder if you are using one of the moods. And now let's get into game. So here we are in game with our mod testing sim Lana Winter, and we're gonna go and have a look at how the buffs turned out. And if we like it, if we want to edit it, we can edit it. So let's go and click in here, go into households, say XML injector tutorial, and let's have a look. So here it is, our buff, our proud buff that we created with the mood pack. If we hover over this, it says tutorial mood pack from tutorial interaction. Lana feels proud that she got this buff. So yeah, it's as simple as that. So now we're just gonna go and have a look at the XML injector tutorial over here. And do that and see our new buff that isn't hiding in here. Our sad buff tutorial. From tutorial interaction, Lana is upset that she got this buff. Yeah, she's sad. Okay. But yeah, that was it. That's how you create buffs, and this way you can test it. If you don't like the text, I can give you a very quick tutorial on how to change that. So if you don't like the way your buff turned out, we can easily go back into English and we can say edit items, and then we can change the text over here. You can also change the text of the text that I just added to the XML injector over here. Any text you can change out here. Then if you still don't really like how it looks, you don't like the image, you can easily go into the image of the buff here and then go into import and import a different image that you prefer. Or you can of course go back into the mod constructor and then edit it in there. So yeah, that was a tutorial about how to create your own buff. I hope it was clear enough. If you have any questions, please leave comments down below. I'll answer them as soon as I can. And if you want to see anything else for a mod tutorial, please let me know in the comments as well, and we'll get to it as soon as possible. Okay, have a good day. Bye.